conversations at a single dimension. Right, technology is going to take your jobs away. I can give you a million examples of where that's true. But if you overlay that technology introduces efficiency, productivity, innovation, etc., those are the precursors to job creation. So we're going to create more jobs than ever before. And where's your evidence? Take a look at economies that have leveraged low-cost labor. Well, have a look at economies that have adopted technology earlier, and the growth trajectories are significantly different. But without a doubt, the technology will evolve humans to be able to continue contributing in the real pace. But what never comes into these conversations, these one-dimensional conversations, is that output will grow exponentially. So output grows exponentially. We may reduce the number of individuals per unit of output, right? But we will still grow the number of individuals because we create so much more output.
Valter, thanks for taking the time to join us here on the Engels podcast.
It's a pleasure.
Appreciate it. Yeah.
Thanks for making the time, Valter.
Well, we might as well just continue the conversation we were having, and we'll weave into yourself just afterwards. So, the work we were doing previously in previous media organizations was, we built out. I was more interested in building out multimedia revenue streams. So there was, at that time, this was only a few years ago. It wasn't that long ago. There was a big opportunity in terms of video, in terms of podcast. There was some mechanism to monetize that. So there just wasn't as big a monetization as, still going in print, the big ads and so forth. Like the model wasn't there. But nevertheless, if you stay that course and you be consistent about it, you pay attention to your product and you pay attention to how you're delivering to the audience and where they're consuming it, you have a nice, consistent, small business perhaps, but still a nice business, particularly locally.
And the format of consumption, everyone talks about people's lack of attention spans, etc. Do you find the trend where what people are looking for in-depth, high-volume consumption, where they can lock out for 30 minutes, 60 minutes, or they're looking for 5 to 10 minutes worth of consumption regularly?
I got to be honest, I've moved a little way away from news. I'm much more of an interest in long-form media. Still with the aesthetics, the sense of journalism, but I listen to it in various different ways. So I'll listen in my car, but then I'll continue listening to it at home if it's a long-form podcast, something like that.
I tend to relate more to that. I must say, I get why there's a view that says short form works, but it doesn't work to me, at least.
Yeah, I think that question is age specific. Right here before you was seated Marco, who does a lot of work with the Gen Zs. His topic, or what he said rather, was a lot of the big corporations, what they're missing is TikTok. And if they put a lot of their content on TikTok, they would attract a lot of the younger people. And if you look at TikTok, it's a lot of short form content, be it news, be it entertainment, whatever goes on TikTok goes in short form. And according to his research, younger people are more inclined to consume content in its shorter, most engaging format.
It says doom scroll. But in terms of consuming knowledge, my short form is I pause and I continue in the car.
Kind of, yes, for Israel.
It's how meaningful, right? But it's short form in my way better. I certainly don't want to be caught up in the doom scrolling full. Getting lots of, with all respect, those needless shots.
Yeah, it is what it is.
Interestingly enough, TikTok is also growing as a search engine. Young people are no longer going to Google and other search engines to search for information. They're going on the social media public platforms to look where to buy, where to go. They search there. So it's, again, I think it's age specific. Different age groups go for different mediums for instance.
So let's back up a little bit. So I could talk for days about the workflow of media and how, but the monetization. Maybe just give us a quick brief on yourself in terms of your work. I really love your approach of. Correct me if I'm using the wrong. I think in terms of mechanization, in terms of how you're rolling out your digital strategies, it comes down to a process as opposed to. It's not a tech problem because the tech's very possible. It's a leadership problem, right?
Correct. And maybe if I roll back a couple of steps. So for organization done with Cadena, it was set up to solve for two specific concepts. which we believe are problems that are top of mind for executives, and that is growth and modernization, right? So, and when I talk about growth, it is material growth that often explores growth outside the core. In macroeconomically constrained environments, the core businesses have reached potential. And if you're a bank, insurance company, for you to win the next customer, you've got to take it away from another organization. However, these organizations have become really good at some form of IP. They've either got the endowment of a customer base, they've got a legacy of trust, performance, etc. Whatever the case might be. And we work with them to look at how we can repackage their legacy in terms of what's made them successful now, to find alternative avenues or markets to campaign where they can create a distinctiveness that gives them an advantage to create value. The theory says, and our experience is, every time we make a move successful like that, the step change in value is pretty successful. So that's where we're spending a lot of time. Take your legacy, a latest technology, create new generation propositions, coffee bars, custom bars, etc., and drive distinctiveness. We've seen a lot of bad activity in the market overnight. The other side of the business speaks to organizations that are happy with their core business, but they need them to modernize the core business so that the core business is competitive in an environment where markets are changing very quickly, customer demands and expectations are changing very quickly. And you hit on the nail. We don't start with the technology. In actual fact, if you take a look at the research that we have, most organizations have some form of modernization initiative underway. But less than 30% of those organizations will achieve a promised return on investment. They'll implement the project on time and budget, but the project doesn't dislodge the value that we're looking for. And often the problem is that they started implementing a technology. You don't need a separate strategy to modernize. You don't need a similar strategy to become AI proficient. What you need to do is go back to the core strategy of your organization has a strategy. Right. That is why you would modernize. That's why you would bring AI. And in the strategy, we surface the dividends of growth, creativity, and experiences to oversimplify it. And then you sort of reverse engineer that into, do you need technology to achieve that at the maximum pace? If it is if technology is the only way to achieve it, what type of technology? We verify that it's this type of technology. Then we go verify the vendor, not the other way around. Not the vendor coming to sell a proposition and convince us that you need to implement the technology. The outcome of that is that an organization knows what to invest into, the sequence in which they need to invest, and how much to invest into each step in that sequence. We don't implement the technology, we don't sell the technology, so our only interest is the success and relevance of this organization. And so coming back to that, that's what we set out to solve for. Right. Over time, we realized that there was a fluency gap in the market. The more time we spent with executives, helping them understand the environment they were in, helping them to think about the environment, then we realized our projects were better. They became more confident in making decisions, less anxious. So off the back of that, we established an academy, the Academy of Business Futures, that is targeted at the C-suite and B-suite and all teams to help them understand the environment they're trading and to develop a high level of fluency to be more confident and trust that.
You said something in your talk up there, and my initial reaction was it was counterintuitive to me, but I get what you meant by it now that I've had time to think about it. You said that most success in innovation in attempting new things comes from if you have more restrictions on it,
yes,
it's more successful. And I was like, oh, that doesn't make sense. But then I realized no, but actually understanding what you're doing in a very close, measured way is probably is going to actually more, like, don't go into a room and ask for a bunch of ideas, right?
Well, absolutely. So this is what may play out in an organization. And I think this may play out in an organization often. They decide they're going to provide an innovation program, make an announcement to the business we're going to be having to come share your ideas. People will queue up outside that executive's office with ideas. One idea will be a development of a life-saving drug. The other idea will be reconfigure the people flow in the canteen so that people can get their food and exit a lot quicker. Right? So everyone, there's many different definitions of innovation. It's a word that's overused. There's a lot of innovation theory. There's a lot of noise, a lot of hype around what cool innovation looks like. I had an executive from one of the oil companies once telling me, he's quite irritated with this innovation thing. People believe you need to wear denims and have a beard in order to innovate. Now that's it.
Yeah.
Whereas if you add constraints to your ecosystem, then you become very deliberate in terms of what value looks like. So before your innovation program needs to be constrained to say, well, one is we need to define value. We need to define by when we need to get that value. How many, is it going to be one opportunity or a number of opportunities? Because you'll look for opportunities differently. So the more constraints I can add, because in other words, instead of having a few of them and I'll look at all horizons to narrow it down, I am a lot more precise in terms of where I place my energy. And very quickly I can see, well, it doesn't matter if this looks attractive. It doesn't meet the mandate of the innovation program. So question tell me about. And it doesn't mean that you may come across really good opportunities that when you look at it on a standalone basis, you press it, it's got a ton of value. But if it's not what the organization is looking for, don't waste time. Like, always be focused, deliberate. And so golden rule, more constraints. And constraints is not just where you bid for the opportunity, it's the constraints you put into the team as well. So the team has got to operate at a different set of KPIs, a different clock speed to the organization. Even financially restraints. In other words, it shouldn't be an endless budget. There should be, even those constraints need to be put in place. It focuses individuals on what they need to do.
It's interesting. In your talk, by the way, brilliant presentation.
Thank you.
I walked in when you were explaining the
Engels pose.
Yes, the Engels pose. I'll get to that. There was something came up there that was very interesting. But you said you've helped build and scale about a lot of business across 17 17 countries in Africa, right?
Yeah, so I've had the responsibility of leading teams.
Right.
Just put across 17 Africa. So we get the sense of how difficult it is to trade in Africa. The opportunities.
Yeah.
But it's not just because you're successful in Johannesburg and Cape Town.
Right.
Doesn't mean it's going to be a slam dunk when you go to Nairobi. There's a different way of doing business.
What patterns and principles did you pick up in this high growth and high scale companies that you worked with? What's that pattern or principles that they all had?
Well, high growth companies or high growth programs, whichever way you want to describe it.
Yeah.
I think there's first of all, there's a good balance between commercial focus and ambition and technology, the relationship it has with technology. At least through how I look at the world of business at these opportunities, is that what we need to be focusing on should be defined by some kind of utility or commercial aspiration we're trying to achieve. We reverse engineer that for technology, and as we reverse engineer that into the technology, we must be unreasonable in the expectation of the proposition we create. The role of technology is then to meet the unreasonable request, not the other way around. So without a doubt, that is one thing that is a pattern inside those organizations. Dedicated leadership that is heavily focused in the business, operating with a very clear focus on what they need to achieve, etc. And clear decision-making, discipline, and governance. And I say that again in the construct of the environment to operate in a way complexity is very high.
Right.
And I want to make sure that the energy and time that we invest into an opportunity is the right opportunity. So in order to have high levels of confidence around that, I need to have a good sense of how decisions get made. What we are looking for, etc. Right. So those kinds of insights and processes, I think, certainly help to bring a good discipline and energy into those initiatives. And then look, the reality is often as a leader, we get a disproportionate amount of the spotlight and the allocation of success, but often reflecting it is probably the biggest contributor to running successful teams like that was having the right people.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
with that, right. So we don't give enough merit to that.
To the teams.
It's the leader's job to actually enable the good people around them. Not find, but you find them and then enable. Too often it's like, oh, leader, but no, actually the team, it's not your job. Yes, you can take the spotlight. That's fine. You're the boss, but enable the individuals around you, because there's amazing people out there doing amazing work that are not the front facing of, or nor want to be the big boss. I just in my personal experience in media, that's often true of the case, and they don't get enough They don't get enough space in the decision-making process when they should.
I'm a big believer in one put a lot of effort in finding the right people, and the right people aren't necessarily the technically strong individuals. There's an attitude, there's a resilience, there's a grace, there's someone that operates with a mindset of what needs to be true. Versus your wife and get it done wins my whole turn. Right? Without a doubt.
Also, the desire to just do good work,
Absolutely.
do a good job.
Agency.
Yeah.
So the nuance between having a mindset of what needs to be true versus you, I can't do it. There's desire, I agree 100%, but there's also agency. Showing up like an adult means the problems that has been given to me, I've got to solve for it. I don't go ask permission or go and ask what needs to be done every time I face a barrier. I figure out I would resolve it, and if I'm not certain, I'll go soundboard. But that agency that comes with desire and resilience was just magic.
How often? What would be your, just as a thumbs up? What would be your percentage of organizations you feel has got that right in terms of leadership and management and enabling the right people?
Shucks,
I suppose it changes across industry as well.
I suppose it changes from industry to industry, and like one also has to be very careful to offer unrequested advice or critique to the organization. I understand what's playing out on the inside. But what I can tell you is one of my barometers to that quotient inside the organization is the busyness of the leadership. If leadership is so busy and that it feels chaotic, never available, things are changing continuous, there's always a sense of there's a fight to be put out. I get worried that the cascade of the division of labor, the cascade of ownership, personal ownership, agency, all the things we're speaking about is not working inside the organization. That's normally a telltale sign for me. Some organizations that we work with are very successful. The CEO is on top of everything, but if you need to have a quick conversation, it was available. They're in control of their time. A CEO that's not in control of the time, I often wonder, it raises questions.
Thank you.
Yeah. In your talk just a few hours ago, you made mention of how important regulation is. And I'm wondering, where did you see it being the powerful enabler, and where did you see it hold us back?
So look, depends on the context.
Right.
In the talk about the future of work and jobs, the requirements to transition a nation, a collection of citizens from an analog to a prosperous digital economy would require a tremendous amount of regulation by policymakers, etc., to make this successful. We don't have to go far. You read the works of leading economists that have advised nations and industries that these transitions. Read up about Estonia, Finland, being in Denmark, South Korea, and you'll see that the patterns that they've implemented are consistent. The regulations that incentivize entrepreneurship, incentivize foreign investments, incentivize controlled risk-taking, which is entrepreneurship and investing into initiatives. And it's not just the one-dimensional thing. There's a cascade of things that are going to go with that. Integration into the various levels of the economy here. Making sure that it's not just about creating prosperity for those that are participating in the economy, but also the social nets required to protect those that fall out as a result of it, So regulation, without a doubt, provides the rails, and that's government's roles. The government's roles actually should be to provide the regulations that allows the carts to upload.
Enable the society, yes.
Right.
And I guarantee you create the platform and the right levels of protection, in other words, things like property rights, protecting my investments, etc. And private sector, private investors will come in, they will invest. And this is not guesswork. This is well studied and known.
Right. And what comes first? Is it strategy or regulation? I mean, from a government perspective.
So you've got to have a strategic intent. I think that's where I started quite. They can start working very closely together. But strategy, I think, without a doubt, it gives you the horizon towards which you
Gives you a North Star, right?
right? Without a doubt. So you do need strategy.
Okay.
And maybe I'll go simplify it. You need an ambition. Right? So what do we need in South Africa? If your ambition is job creation and economic growth, anchor the strategy on that.
On that.
Right? And it becomes very clear that the quickest way to get there is some form of a digitization that makes our companies more competitive, or forces our companies to be more competitive, brings investment, frees up corporate balance sheets to invest, for instance. So there's many layers of regulations, many layers of policies that come together in harmony. I think Gleeson and Bocho sort of touched on that in terms of the stuff they're doing in the rail sector. And we've seen it, the change is notable over the last couple of months.
Do you work across industries? I mean,
Yeah, so we're industry-agnostic on purpose because the learnings are transferable across industries.
yeah, that was my next question. Is almost your application of your consultancy, I guess, is I don't want to say formulaic, but it's would you describe it as that, or how would you?
So I would say that there's a blueprint. It's not formulaic. It's we've tried many times to do it like that. It doesn't work.
Okay.
But it's like knowing how to navigate an ocean.
Yeah.
You understand the conditions in which you're going to sail, the winds, the ocean currents, the storms, etc. And the path is always very different. Lots of corrections to get us back on path to ultimately get to the point we want to get to. We made a very conscious decision to be industry-agnostic. We've operated across a variety of industries. We actually operated across all industries. But for the certain industries, we haven't done work in alcohol, cigarettes, and candy. There's a disproportionate concentration in financial services because of the size of the economy. But from healthcare to food and agriculture, from infrastructure, physical infrastructure, right through to data businesses, we've covered it all. And there's magic, by the way, in doing that. One is that if you ask someone from the industry to think about where the next play is, you're going to get industry think. The Bob Disney says the old museum gets play banned. So we're quite deliberate at the very early stages of these programs not to bring industry stalwarts into the rest in order to get a different perspective, get the right questions playing out for us, look at a different angle, find unrelated connections that create value. When we get to the implementation of it, where we're now going from concept to value and knowledge in these businesses, then in that instance, we want the people that have done this 100 times to be in the business on our first, right? So we're very deliberate around that. And then there's magic in being able to transfer commercial insights across industries. You can take a business model and apply it across another industry. We took many years ago one of the mobile operator type selling models, the prepaid, postpaid type approach, and we took it into the energy sector. Now it's corrosive. But the first use of that model was in the telco space. So there's magic in that cross-pollinating.
Yeah. Nice.
You made mention of a concept that couldn't quite grasp it very well, where we want to merge the use of technology to how it would increase the intelligence and increase productivity of human beings instead of going the other way around.
Yeah.
And if you look at, let's say, the second industrial revolution, perhaps, where the guy in the mine used a chisel and a hammer, and then came the rock breaker. But however, the rock breaker did not replace the guy, it empowered him to be more productive. Are we having a lot of fear around new technology instead of seeing it as the rock breaker guy who then used the guy with the chisel and hammer who then used the rock breaker?
The simple answer is yes. Yeah, and this fear repeats itself over and over again. And again, it's because, for the reason I described at the start of my talk, is that we have these conversations at a single dimension. Right, technology is going to take your jobs away. Yes. I can give you a million examples of where that's true. But if you overlay that technology introduces efficiency, productivity, innovation, etc., those are the precursors to job creation. So we're going to create more jobs than ever before. And where's your evidence? Take a look at economies that have leveraged low-cost labor. Well, have a look at economies that have adopted technology earlier, and the growth trajectories are significantly different. And my concern for an economy like South Africa and most African economies is that We cannot sustain the required growth trajectory using low-cost layer. It's not possible. Right, so you have to modernize.
Right.
There's this view that says, but we're going to result in job losses. Yeah, there will be. But the net effect is we'll create more jobs than ever before. I'll give you a practical example. In a second, you cannot create your prosperity with job creation without modern mass. I mean, this is not guesswork, right? You're speaking about the rock breakers, etc. Iglesias Gorjo was talking about like very specialized equipment that they brought onto some of the mines. And they were successful at training people that didn't have the technical skill to become technical operators for that. They were given an opportunity that otherwise they wouldn't have. They would have tried their traditional role in the mine. Now, obviously, this individual had the cognitive capability to do that, and etc., and was able to be trained. But without a doubt, the technology will evolve humans to be able to continue contributing in the real pace. We may see a reduction in the number of individuals per unit of productivity that gets generated. Well, that's what you see. But what never comes into these conversations, is one-dimensional conversations, is that output will grow exponentially. So output grows exponentially. We may reduce the number of individuals per unit of output.
Right.
But we will still grow the number of individuals because we create so much more output. Agricultural sector is a good example. We employ a much lower percentage of the addressable labor force in agriculture, but we've grown in absolute numbers over the last couple of decades. The output is also exponentially more in the real sense of what exponentially is. So I do think through the quant research that we do, through the qualitative observations and insights that we gain from the work that we get to deploy, from thinking deeply about this and just reflecting on it, I see a world that is prosperous.
Right.
But it's not automatically prosperous. We've got to be on the right side of change. My biggest concern is if someone says, we're not going to modernize, we're not going to change because that's bad for the employers. My concern is it might be bad in the short term. It's going to be a lot worse in the long term.
I mean, in the context of South Africa, and we've had numerous conversations over the last couple of days about the national AI strategies and so on, and hopefully turning in some sort of policy. Are you confident in South Africa making proper changes over the next few years, and in the sense of at least getting their mindset right from a government perspective? Are you confident with that, or?
This is I'm optimistic by nature. I believe in this South African resilience, the ability to do what is impossible. We're just an amazing collection of people.
Right.
What I would like to see is policymakers and people in government that want to serve the population. And I think if we take the South African will and we take the willpower to serve and to bring about change, then I am so confident for the future. But it's got to be a synergy. It's got to be a partnership that comes together. And my hand is up to support that transition with us.
You made this analogy on stage. You said 10,000 years ago, a man without glasses would probably die of hunger, would not have a mate, and would probably die sad and lonely.
Absolutely.
Right, but because now the man has glasses, he's
Your wallet has reached its limit and you cry it off, right? So you can't compete.
right now. No, you've got the glasses. You have a lot to do now. You're empowered in a sense.
I've just evolved intelligently about choice.
There you go. Are we seeing the same response perhaps to AI, in the sense that the fear around AI is too much that we might miss the glasses moment?
But this is exactly why I had the conversation. Is everyone's caught up in the fear, and my ask to everyone is just think about,
Right.
don't, separate, try and, it's everyone's responsibility to separate the noise from the real signals. And to get to the signals, you've got to go past the headlines and understand what's happening at a first principles basis. If you look at first principles basis information in terms of where we are today, we're not seeing a jobless future, right? The technology is progressing at a phenomenal rate. But then just think of, my call is for audience to think. Technology is not a virus, it's not happening to us. It's happening because we allow it.
Right.
And if we allow it, that means that there's some kind of benefit for us. And so one of the benefits, and to relieve that anxiety, one of the benefits is that it's a tool with which we're going to evolve intelligence. So we can cognitively do more. And your ability to broadcast with limited equipment is much easier than what it was 100% 20 years ago, all right? The way we engage and socialize, we spoke about it earlier, has changed fundamentally as a result of technology.
Yeah.
We are going to live longer, significantly longer, high quality lives because of technology.
Right.
So the technology is if we embrace it as a conscious and intelligent choice to evolve the human condition, then we've got to be excited about this, right? But again, we've got to take responsibility to remain relevant. The risk is not AI that's going to take a job away. It's someone else that is proficient in AI. Absolutely. That can do 100% better. And there's one other thing I do want to mention, is that if we're thinking about AI and exponential technology is creating an opportunity to do less cheaper, then you are going to fail.
Right.
And you're going to become irrelevant because it's like trying to find a shortcut. We've got to embrace the mindset that we've got to be looking for at these technologies to do more better.
Right.
Which then speaks to productivity and efficiency.
When I walked into your presentation, you were on the Engels pause.
Yes.
I almost thought you were talking about the Gartner hype curve.
No.
And I quickly realized, okay, I think AI as per that curve is at the end of it. It's now mainstream, it's now stable and useful.
So
is it not?
there's many different types of AI.
Right.
So there's a lot of AI that's at the peak of expectations at the moment.
Right.
Right. So this is why you see conflicting reports coming from same sources. Yeah. All jobs are going to be eliminated. Jobs are being lost. Right. There's this. We are at the peak of expectations. What is interesting is that investment and R&D, as we've seen a bit of a dip in 2025, if I recall correctly, which is symptomatic. It doesn't mean that technology is not good.
Right.
This is the maturation process. However, there are elements of AI that are going into that slope of enlightenment, which is past maturation, which is ironically autonomous vehicles.
Oh.
So you're seeing it, the big launch just a few months ago. I read an interesting stat that, and I can't recall I don't know if I'm recording it correctly, but since the approval of the use of autonomous vehicles on US roads, 4 million miles or 8 million miles are coming to me.
Ooh.
And I think that's going to grow quite significantly. It's interesting research coming out from that space that would suggest that taxi rides will drop from $4 a mile to 40 cents a mile as a result of autonomous taxis. So that seems to be on a slope of enlightenment.
Right.
Because we're going to see more and more of that. Things like intelligent automation certainly moving into mature adoption. But there's other elements of artificial intelligence that are either at the troika, disillusionment, or at the peak of expectations. So it's not just one thing. There's many different subsectors of artificial intelligence.
Okay. And where are we as the continent? Are we lagging behind on that curve, or are we at the automation?
Curve speaks to the progression of the technology. Relevant, right? Right. Excuse me. So South African companies don't lag the rest of the world. Okay, so if the technology becomes mature, like using it inside corporates, then corporates respond really quickly. You might see a lag in terms of autonomous vehicles because we don't have the sensors that are RFID to be on the road infrastructure in order to make it work. So there's some input into infrastructure that's required. So South African companies are quite good. Especially our listed large corporates, they're world class. What I did show, and I don't know if you saw it, is that when the acceptance levels, trust levels, and adoption levels of AI were investigated around the world, the heaviest users and the countries with the highest levels of trust and acceptance were developing economies. And South Africa was the 8th highest in that regard.
I saw that, which I was surprised about. But you had another slide as well that our time online is actually the highest in the world.
Yeah,
What?
Yeah, that's very interesting.
Are we doom scrolling?
Yeah, well, I don't know what we're doing. So it's just two of the across the two presentations. On the our side, in recent research that came out of Australia, I think 2 months ago, it demonstrated that South Africa is one of the heaviest users in the world of AI technology. The technology is powerful, it's almost free, and you need very basic devices to make it work. So I think there's certainly an opportunity for leapfrogging and experimentation, etc. And I think it's just our nature. We tend to be probably easier to adopt. We probably have a higher profile for risk taking than, for example, the Nordics and very low levels of trust in that regard. But the point you referred to was another statistic in which it shows that South Africans are the heaviest users of the internet at a per capita level of individuals that have got access to the internet. So the world average is under 7 hours. South Africans spend 9 hours at the moment, 9 hours and 37 minutes, some days less.
Surely that means good things moving forward in terms of businesses we can maybe expect to see in terms of, I mean, are we just going to be consumers, or are we actually going to be building things up?
That's a good question. I think the information around what's driving the attitudes and what's driving the use is there's some evidence of that. When I looked at that data, I thought we are learning online, we are job seeking online, etc. Yet learning and job seeking came out at ranked 7th to 8th in terms of that.
Yeah.
So what came out at number 1 and 2 was searching information and leisure.
Okay.
Oh,
All right.
so we are doom scrolling.
But where you are, and it could be a factor of remote working. Right. The field of remote working is still very high in SA.
And that's just geographically. Like it's not like the individual is necessarily South African. It's just the usage coming out of South Africa. So maybe just because we're a lot of digital nomad, to your point, so there's a lot of guys
working usage in South Africa. So other interesting stats around South Africans is that disproportionately high use of WhatsApp. Oh, we are very high on WhatsApp. We are like native WhatsApp users.
I can't imagine why the rest of the world hasn't caught on. It's such a useful tool. Like, it's so useful.
Look, I suppose if you're I'm not too afraid with the detail of it, but if you're in the US market where iPhone penetration is very high, iMessaging is just as it can, and it's unsure. And perhaps that's one of the reasons, because the US has got a much lower penetration at a percentage over compared to South Africa.
Sure. I don't want to keep you for too long. It's been a great chat. I appreciate it. I don't know if you want to keep going or.
No, it's been a great chat. Yeah, let's not keep them too long. But sorry, before you go, the Engels pause.
Yes.
In relation to AI, where are we?
I think we're firmly in an AI pause. So the Engels pause is an observation made during the first industrial revolution. Can I just recap it again and then answer your question? It says that when a technology enters an industry, the incumbent's relative performance compared to the organization that is using that technology drops. When your competitiveness drops, your productivity drops, and as a result of that, they will lay off people, they pay less wages, etc. And so they go into this Engels pause. And the pause relates the time between the introduction of that technology into the industry and the time that it took for that organization, the incumbent, to use the technology. And so whichever way you look at it, the only way to shorten Engels pause is to move towards the technology. What do organizations do when a technology enters the market? We speak it away. I think we've matured a lot over the last 10 years, but when digital entered the market, everyone wrote digital off as a fad. It's taken us 20 years to get to how did this overnight business computer though? It's because we didn't understand the exponential progression of technology. So there was certainly a digital pause, and I think there's an AI pause. And the AI pause, however, I think is not being caused by organizations not moving towards artificial intelligence. It's them moving towards it incorrectly. So remember, the gap is between the introduction and the adoption of the technology at a proficient level.
Right.
So we've got a lot of organizations that are experimenting with AI, but from a technology first perspective. And so what they're going to have is a collection of interesting projects, in my opinion, that are not material to the organization. We've got to go back to the start of our conversation that says, what are we solving for? Growth, productivity, or experience? Can I solve it with the AI? What type of AI? What's the business case for that? And then let's invest.
Oh,
So we're going to stay, I think organizations may get stuck in an Engels pause, not because they're not open to it. I think everyone's learned the lesson, you've got to move towards the technology. That's because we're moving at its incorrect. It should not be open. Artificial intelligence is not the silver bullet. If you've got a bad strategy, a bad business, a strong position, artificial intelligence is not going to solve for that.
interesting that you say that corporations are kind of stuck at the pause, because what you'd notice in the industry is a lot of organizations have done a great job in demonstrating what they can do with AI, but they haven't moved past demonstrating and actually creating and delivering value.
That's exactly what I refer to. Is like you can have a lot of pet projects and pilots excited until it's embedded into the organization and it's a material contributor to the success of the organization. You're not a proficient user of the technology.
Right.
So it's theater. We under nice budget to be automated and automated this, we answered a call, etc. Very nice. Has it fundamentally changed the performance of the business? Not really a proficient user of it. And organizations, again, I think it's really good that we're open to adopting the technology.
Right.
But the lesson is, you don't start at the technology. You start at the utility and the commercial.
100%.
Thing which you solve.
Sure. That has been a masterclass.
Yeah, that was great.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Walter.
Thank you so much for spending time with us. It's been great. Thank you.